Greetings Earthlings, welcome back to Code with Srini. In this lecture, we're going to look at how to set up Angular material, include a default theme, build a simple application with sidebar navigation, and build a toolbar, add few input elements like input text or checkboxes. We can look at that later on, but let's just get started. So first thing first, check if you got an Angular CLI installed in your PC. So to do that, you're going to give it as ng version, and that will spit out the current Angular CLI versions and Node version as well, and the current Angular version, which is we are using it as a 7th version. Okay, so we are good. If you don't have an Angular CLI, you can just head straight over to the documentation for Angular CLI installation. So it is cli.angular.io, and there will be steps for you to install and set up a new application. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new application using Angular CLI. So ng new Angular material getting started. So let's just have, it's quite a longish name, but that's okay. So do we need a routing? I'm not sure. Just go ahead and give it as yes, and we'll be using a CSS. Okay, so once our application is set up, now we are inside our Angular material getting started directory, and then we can go ahead and install our dependencies for the Angular material, which is npm install save and then add angular /material, and we need a couple of more packages for this to get working. Angular CDK and add Angular animations. Now we might not need this for now, but let's just be there. So let's go ahead. Now it'll start to install our dependencies for the Angular material. Now if you notice, I'm just taking it straight away from the documentation that's available here. Everything is available in the documentation, so you can just go ahead and refer to that. It's available in Angular material Angular IO, so that's there. And then next step is, let's go ahead and open up the code editor. I'm gonna take a quick look at the app module TS, which is over there, to see if there is anything added into our Angular application. So in our Angular material getting started, there is it's just the default settings, the default code block that's available right there. None of the Angular material is added to it yet. Now the next thing is, we can go ahead and enable the animations that we install in our npm install, right? So we can either enable it or disable it by just including it in the import statement called as import platforms browser /animations. Okay, and then we need to include this into our imports. So all the modules go into the import. So this is how you will be including animations to your application. So that's there. Now alternatively, we can disable the animations by importing the no op animations module. So it can be done by, okay, so it's from the same thing, no op animations module, and then add them in your imports. Okay, it's pretty much set. Now let's go ahead and execute our application, which is ng serve. All right, it's compiled successfully. Once it's done that, we can find our application that's running currently on localhost 4200 server. Okay, so it's the 4200, and we can't see any errors or anything that's related to Angular material, and there is nothing. So let's add some component modules from Angular material. Okay, the component modules can be found here. Now if you check out the documentation for the Angular material, Angular material offers pretty much everything that is needed to build a complete web application from scratch. You can build anything, imagination is your limit, customizing it greatly and theming your app to your needs, right? So the documentation is divided into 6 sections, such as from the form controls up to the data table. Now, starting from the form controls, you will have things like the autocomplete, or you will have you can make use of checkboxes, which is right over here, and even the date pickers. You got everything that's needed to build a complete web application, right? All the way to the layouts. Even the layouts are neatly defined here. You can have a card style layout, which you can find it over here, and then you might need a tab layout. Okay, you might need this in your application, so you can make use of this. Okay, let's jump into one by one and add our components to our app. Okay, so first thing is I'm gonna have a toolbar. Let's go ahead to the toolbar. Where it is? Okay, it's right over here. So this is a toolbar. Let's add it and customize it a little bit. Okay, so to do that, first let's create a file called material-module.ts. okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a separate ng module and then import those information into our app module. We want to isolate the material into a separate model, so it will be easier for us to manage it, and if you want to add or remove component, it will be much easier. So ng module from, why not, I'm just going to copy paste it from here. So it's going to be import statement. Okay, and then I'll be having a decorator function called ng module. I'm going to remove the declaration. We won't need this. We will be needing imports and exports. So that's the main part. Exports. Okay. And there is none. And finally, export class of material module. Okay, so this is the one that we're gonna export. Okay, so let's go ahead and import our toolbar. Should be mat toolbar module from Angular material. Now we're gonna copy paste that. Copy it. Okay, it's a silly mistake over here. Okay, so if you notice, I've just included all of the material into for the mat toolbar. Ideally, in the API, if you notice, if you want to just include just the toolbar, you should be giving it like that. But in this lecture, we're going to include many things, such as we're going to include a button. We will be also using side nav menu. Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe buttons and checkboxes and lists. Okay, so that's done. Now the toolbar is done. We need to tell our application to use this material module in our app module. We haven't done that, so just go ahead and command period to import that material mod. Okay, so that's done. Let's look at our application. Now everything works. There are no error in the browser console, but the look and feel is not quite expected. This is not a material design-ish look ideally. So I think we forgot to add a theme to our application, right? For now, let's include a default theme that's available in the that's provided in the material design, which is a indigo pink, right? So I already have a piece of code which includes a pre-built themes for our application, and the other one is I'm gonna define our body with some neat font, and then let's go ahead to our app component and add our toolbar. But before that, let's get rid of this. Now to add a toolbar, we need mat toolbar, and the mat toolbar, let's just save it and see if there is anything yeah, we have our toolbar ready, and we need to add few information into our toolbar. So I'm gonna add my awesome app. It's showing up neat and perfect. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add a ID for it so that we can customize it to our need. And also I'm gonna set a default primary color for it, which will turn out to be a blue because indigo pink. Okay, this is indigo, not blue. The primary is the indigo, and the secondary will be a pink, I guess. Maybe one. Yes, no, one is a red. Accent is the indigo, pink, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so we have a primary, secondary, one, and accent. We're gonna use primary for now. This is just plain and simple. Now what we're gonna do is we will be adding an icon. So matte icon with a ID of, let's say, toolbar menu. Okay, so first thing first, let's just be like that. And we need to add the name for our icon. So this is subject, which is a menu icon. We need it right over there. Let's just see if this works. I believe we should be throwing up an error. Yes, matte icon is a known element. It's not a known element, which means we didn't include this into our material module. So in our material module, we need to add that module. So it should be matte icon module. Once we import that, we also need to do an imports and exports section as well. But again, we have a problem. We don't have an icon listed here. Instead, we have a subject which we have provided over here, just the textual reference of it. So to overcome that, what we need to do is we forgot to add the icons in our index HTML. All right, to get the icons working, we need to include this font Google APIs link, which is already provided in the material design document. So we don't need to worry much about that. So if you go to the documentation and scroll down, you can find the add material icon section, which is on step 6, and add the link to our application. So that's done. I'm going to close this up because we don't need this anymore. So once that's done, our icon is rendered properly without any issues. Okay, I'm going to just resize this. Now we have our toolbar menu ID defined, and we need to define some styling to our toolbar. All right, if you notice, we have our hamburger menu, which is showing up as an icon. I changed it into a subject which is looking neat and different than the hamburger menu. I kind of like it, but you can change it whichever menu you want. Another thing is I defined an ID over here. The reason is I'm not getting a cursor pointer, so I'm gonna have a cursor pointer over for our toolbar menu. So for our menu icon, I'm gonna give it as cursor as a pointer to achieve that. So that's done. And then yes, also for our toolbar icon for the menu, I'm gonna have a little bit of spacing between the icon and as well as the title. So it's going to be margin right of a 20 pixel, just roughly. We can adjust that later on in our application. So yes, that looks a bit neat compared to the previous version. Okay, so let's take one step further and see how our application looks. So far we have included a cursor pointer to our menu icon, and then now let's go ahead and include a side navigation. Regarding the side navigation, you can find everything in the API documentation provided in the Angular material. To set up a side nav, we use 3 components. One is the material matte side nav container, matte side nav content, and matte side nav. Okay, the matte side nav container, which is a main structural container that holds the entire side nav, which is over there, and then a matte side nav content represents the main content, and then the matte side nav, which is a drawer content. Okay, so in the materials module, we need to include a matte side nav module, as well as in the imports and the exports section. So once that's done, we can go ahead and we are good to create a side nav for our application. So firstly, we need to create a container, so which is a mat side nav container that houses the both the drawer, which is the mat side nav, as well as the mat side nav content. So mat side nav with a, let's call it as side nav for now, and then we're gonna have a mode as a side. Okay, there are 3 modes: push, side, and over, so each behaves differently, and we will have our side nav opened by default. So these information are already available in the API documentation, so you can just go ahead and refer to that document. And the next thing is we need the main content, which is a mat side nav content. Okay, so this will have a main content. This is the main content area. So once you look at it, you'll have a side nav and main content, which is okay. It's just a bare bone and skeletal structure we have. We don't even have the entire side nav flowing through the full screen of our page. Okay, the next thing is I'm gonna have the click action, the click event for our side nav. So once you click it, it should toggle the side nav. So for that, in our side nav, what we're gonna do is create a template variable called side nav, and then create a click event for our icon, which is click and then side nav dot toggle. Right, this template variable is defined by myself. You can have any names you want based on your application complexity, but for now I've just gave it as a side nav, so this should work as expected. Now once that's done, if you click on it, it's toggling well and good. Okay, so this is pretty much about it. And you can also listen to the events fired from these side nav open and close events. So you got something called opened, and bind it to a side nav events, call it as opened and closed, and you can have a same method and call it as closed. Right, what we're gonna do is open up because we don't have the function defined yet, so we're gonna open up our component class and then create our side nav string, and we're gonna console that to our browser. Alright, so this should work now. Now once that's done, so this will show that a side nav is open or closed, and based on your application you can make use of this events, which is very great and which is very, very handy. I'm gonna comment that out for now, and then I'm gonna remove this for now, so we don't need this. Making this side nav fully to the full height of our page. So to do that, we'll just need to add a full screen directive, so that'll make the side nav and main content as full screen. Now if you notice, our toolbar is gone, but it's not actually gone. But what we're going to do is, we know the height of the toolbar as 64 pixels. We will just create an ID for our side nav container, which is a side nav container. Okay, the side nav container, and I'm gonna define a CSS for that. So hash side nav, and then margin top as 64 pixels. Okay, so once we set the margin top as 64 pixels, we can see our side nav and main content pushed below the toolbar, so it's neat for now. And let's go ahead and add some buttons or menu to our side nav, and also customize our side nav a little bit. So to do that, we're gonna create a ID for our side nav, which is a ID equals side nav, and then I'm gonna go to the CSS and call it as side nav with a width of 240, because the current side nav is too much smaller. Now this will be a bit bigger, fine. And then yes, I'm gonna add some buttons. Firstly, I'm gonna add some list and then some buttons to our side nav. So to do that, again, we need to go to our material modules and then add some list here. So that will be mat list module. So I'm gonna add it over here and here as well. Okay, let's go ahead to the app component HTML, and then in the side nav content, so in the side nav I'm gonna add a list. So the material list component is mat list selector, and I'm gonna have a mat list item, so it's a mat. So I'm gonna have also do an ID for this, so it's easier for us to do a CSS styling for our mat list menus. And mat list item, right, and a button with a mat flat button. I'm gonna come to that quickly, but let's have it as a dashboard. It's working because I think I have added, I'm not sure why this works. Okay, we need to add a module for buttons, so it's a mat button module. We got it. So a material button. Now what we do is we're gonna style this up a little bit and then add all the buttons to our few more buttons to our side nav. So if you go to the documentation and look at the buttons, which is over here, so you can have basic buttons, raised or stroke. These are the predefined stylings that you may want in your application. So for now I'm going for a flat button, so that would be something like this. It's just a flat button. I'm gonna do some customization to my button. I'm gonna also clean up the code a little bit. So button, mat flat button, and then a class for our button. So that should be menu item. So we have ID of menus and menu item as our each menu item, the buttons, right? So let's go to the style CSS and then define a styling for our buttons. So side nav and menu item. So first thing first, we need a width of 100 pixels for 100% for our buttons. That's one thing, and a border radius of 0, because right now the border radius is somewhere 4 or 8 pixels. But if your design is something to do with border radius, you can straight away leave that. And we need to align it as a left, and I'm gonna give a nice little padding of 8 pixels. Okay, so we do have a little bit of padding or margin on the side of the list, so we need to get rid of that. So for that I'm gonna inspect and look where it's coming from. It should be definitely from the list item content or something like this. Yes, it's a mat list item content. So I'm gonna do a rewrite, style rewrite for that. So mat list content with a padding of 0. Oh no, that's a hash. Okay, so it's on a full width, so we don't need to bother much about that. And let's have a hover effect. So menu item, and then give it as a hover, and we're gonna slightly change the background color to something like EEE. So this should work reasonably well. Yep, that's working. fine. Now the next thing is we got this working. We totally forgot about the adding a icon to our button. So to do that, what we're gonna have an icon. So mat icon. And what icon? For the dashboard, there is already a list of icons available for that, which is a dashboard icon. So that should work, right? Brilliant. It looks really neat. Now what I'm going to do is copy this and use it for other things, like I'm going to have project. Oh no, that's the dashboard. Project, and I'm going to copy this again. We'll be having something called settings. So for a project, you need to find out an icon for that. So I thought work will be a better fit. So you have the briefcase kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add work, and for the setting there is something called settings application. I think I mixed everything up. Project and settings. So if you look at it, you got the menu, the navigation button with the icons as well. Now we need to clean up our icon a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make use of the mat icon selector. So let's go over to the mat icon, and then let's get this, which is the menu item is a button, remember that, and then mat icon is a selector. So we can just go ahead and give it as a margin right of some 20 pixels. I'm not sure whether the margin right is perfect, but I think this is just fine. Okay, so we can also provide some more padding to give that nice spacing around the button. Okay, so the margin is set and we have a gap, and the side nav works perfectly well. Okay, let's add a bit more component to the toolbar. Okay, so for that let's go ahead, and I thought adding a badge. Where is it? Adding a badge to our button will be a nice thing. So I thought let's go ahead and add a badge. So in our toolbar right over there, I'm gonna add something called span and class it as toolbar spacer, so that just stays there. Okay, so and the next thing is mat icon, and I'm gonna have a mat icon of notifications. Okay, that's a standard thing, right? So you will have a notification on every applications that you work on or that you use. So we will have define a class called toolbar icon, and let's define a mat badge of 8, and then mat badge position after, and mat badge color accent. Okay, so that should fire up something. Okay, so the best thing is we got that working, but we don't have our badge. We got a notification icon, that's a bell icon, but we don't have a badge on that. To do that, first let's go ahead and define some of the toolbar icons. Right, so that's on the toolbar menus over there. Main toolbar dot toolbar spacer, and we're going to use a flex box thing, auto, and then again we will be having a toolbar icon. That's the icon that we just gave with a cursor of pointer. First thing, I think for all the icons we need to give it as a cursor pointer, and margin as a 0, which is a top and bottom as 0, and size will be somewhere around 4 pixels or 8 pixels. Just a random guess. So the icon should move to the far right hand side, so which is right now it's doing perfect. Now the only thing is I don't have this badge working. Okay, to get the badge working, I believe we should add that into our materials module. So let's quickly add that up. Yes, we got our badge working. So these are the parameters that we need to get this show up here. So mat badge position after, which is showing up after an icon, and we can give it as a before to show that before an icon, so like this. Okay, and the mat badge value, it can be anything, ABC. Okay, so just leave it like 8. We can have primary color as well in our mat badge color. So this is how you set up a badge and attach it to your Angular application, and then whenever something comes up, whenever you subscribe to an event which has some notification, it will show up here. Okay, so this is pretty much done. Now let's focus on the main content. For the main content, we need to add a thing called okay, before that, let's add some data to our component file. So in our app component, I'm gonna add something called task, and with a string of some random things. Okay, I already have that information. I'm gonna copy it over. So just a random thing, and then in my app component HTML, I'm gonna create a new content in our main content area, which is over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a mat material selection list. Material selection list is similar to the list item that you see here, but instead it will have a checkbox at the end. So material selection list, and then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna add a class called dash-list and a h3 of to do, and finally I'm going to run the list mat list option with a for loop, ng for let to do of task that we have defined earlier, and finally to do. So this should show up right as a main content. Now if you click on it, you will get all the selection, the list with the selection. So the next thing is style this up a little bit. So the dash list in our now dash list h3 is the main thing we need to target, and give it a padding of somewhere around 12 pixels. I guess that should be good. Yep, so it aligns up properly. So this is pretty much it. And we forgot one more thing to do. Okay, we have the menu item, but we can bring up an avatar over here to in most of the application it will be like that, right? So there will be some sort of an avatar and the name of the person who logged in, and then the list of menus. Okay, so let's build that up for now. So to do that, we're going to make use of a cards component from the material design. So just after the mat list menu, I'm gonna have a card and material card header and a div, which has a mat card avatar with a class of avatar. So just going to align this, format this code a little bit. So it's going to be an empty div for now, and inside our card we will be having a card title. So mat card title, which is a John Doe, and mat card subtitle, which is a internal employee or something like some information about John Doe. And as I expected, I got this template parse error. So whenever you get a template parse error, which instantly you should remember that you have not included this in your ng module. So it's a mat card module. So once you add that up, you should be getting it without an error. So bingo, we don't have an avatar yet. So what we do is we'll go ahead and style it up to bring the avatar. Now in our side nav, so hash side nav, we have a class called avatar, and let's have a background image URL of our avatar. So that's I got this from the internet, where you can have a dynamic placeholder avatar kind of thing. It's a placeholder avatar and a background size of cover. Okay, it looks like it's working. We have a rounded avatar kind of thing, and we have our name information using a card. So okay, so far we have seen how to include a toolbar and a hamburger menu for our toolbar, and when we click on it, we built a side nav along with the main content, which lists out a selection list options, so with a checkbox. And when you do a toggle with the menu, your side nav expands and collapses. Okay, so inside the side nav we have our avatar and we have our menu items, menu buttons. We can also extend this into a menu with a hierarchy, where you have a drop down, and then when you hover over it, you'll be having a drop down, and furthermore you'll have few more menus listed down below. And finally, we also have a notification icon which is pushed far right with a badge on top of it. This is pretty much about getting started with Angular material. In the upcoming sessions, we're going to look at some of the tricks and tips on using various kind of layouts using Angular material, especially with the side nav. Okay, thank you for watching and have a nice day, and bye bye.